Bobby stood before his mother's grave, tears streaming down his face as he mourned her loss. The weight of his grief was almost unbearable, but he couldn't bring himself to leave just yet. He had no family left now that his mother was gone, and a social worker was waiting for him on the sidelines, ready to take him to a foster home. The thought of leaving his home and the life he had known behind filled him with dread, and he lamented the unfairness of it all. As he wept, a luxury car pulled up nearby, distracting him from his sorrow. He recognized it as a car similar to the one his father had driven, but his attention was quickly drawn to the woman who emerged from it. She bore a striking resemblance to his mother, and for a moment, he was convinced it was her. His heart raced as he approached her, unable to believe his eyes. "Mummy," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. The woman looked at him, her expression sympathetic but confused. "I'm sorry, son," she said gently. "I'm not your mother. I'm your Aunt Samantha." Bobby was taken aback by her words. He had never heard of his mother having a sister before, and the revelation left him feeling confused and unsure. "I didn't know Mom had a sister," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Samantha looked at him sympathetically, her heart aching for the little boy who had just lost his mother. "I know, sweetie," she said softly. "I'm sorry we didn't tell you sooner. We wanted to wait until the right time." Bobby didn't know what to make of it all. His childhood had been wonderful when his parents were still together. They had money, and every outing resulted in a new toy for him to play with. But things changed when his father left, and his mother was left to fend for herself and her son. The luxuries he had grown accustomed to disappeared, and his mother struggled to make ends meet. The stress of it all eventually took its toll on her, and Bobby believed it was the reason for her premature death. Now, at 10 years old, he was alone in the world, and the prospect of being taken to a foster home filled him with dread. All he wanted was to stay by his mother's side forever, even if it meant sleeping in the cemetery where she lay. But now, with the revelation that he had an aunt, things were changing once again. He didn't know what his future held, but he knew that he had someone else in his life who cared about him. And for the first time since his mother's passing, he felt a glimmer of hope. At Janet's funeral, Bobby was left alone, with no family or friends to comfort him. He mourned his mother's death and cried until a luxurious car pulled up near the cemetery. A woman who looked exactly like Janet stepped out of the car, leaving Bobby confused and in shock. He wondered how this could be possible since his mother had just died. As the woman approached him, he recognized her voice and felt a glimmer of hope. He thought perhaps his mother had somehow survived or had been resurrected. However, as she drew closer, she revealed that she was actually his aunt, Samantha. Samantha explained to Bobby that there was a reason for Janet's financial struggles, but it was not something that she could tell him yet. She knew that 10-year-old Bobby was too young to understand the feud that existed between her and her sister, Janet. Samantha and Janet were twins who had grown up in a wealthy family, but when their parents died, Janet had done everything in her power to take the entire inheritance and ran away to California. Ironically, Janet's husband would later take all that money and run away himself, leaving her with nothing. Samantha, who had grown up with the same privilege as Janet, was left with nothing, but she did not let her circumstances hold her down. After college, she started a business and became a self-made woman with more than enough to spare. She thought about calling Janet to brag about her situation, but she found out about Janet's passing when CPS located her to ask if she would be willing to take Bobby in. Despite everything that had happened between them, Samantha could not let Bobby go into the system, so she decided to take him in. Years later, when Bobby was studying law, he discovered the truth about what had happened with Janet and Samantha. He found out about the inheritance, how Janet had taken it, and how his father had stolen it. Bobby became a ruthless litigator, finding his father and suing him for every penny he had. He won the lawsuit and gave half of the money to Samantha, asking for her forgiveness for what his mother had done. With the other half, he started his own law practice and fought for people who had been ripped off of their hard-earned money. The story shows how money can destroy families and people, as it ruined Janet and Samantha's relationship and Janet's marriage. Bobby also believed that his mother had died because of financial struggles. However, he learned that family is essential, And we must step up and do the right thing, regardless of what happened in the past. Samantha's decision to take Bobby and saved him from a life in the system, and Bobby's decision to fight for others was his way of making things right. In conclusion, the story teaches us that we must not let money come between our relationships, and we must always prioritize family, no matter the past. Bobby's transformation from a grieving boy to a successful lawyer who fights for justice is an inspiration to us all.